I'm here today with Shep Gordon. Shep is legendary in the culinary world. He's been one of the greatest music managers, and as a friend of mine, I have to say one of the most creative and imaginative people I've ever encountered.
I'm at a point first time in my life I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's so big, the avalanche, and I don't know who these people are that have taken over our country, but I know that there's a lot of them, and I don't even know how to speak to them.
And in one sense, I know they're in pain.
Oh, absolutely.
Because what they chose is...
No, they're beating themselves up. Yeah, I think it's hate-based, which is unfortunate, but the practical realities of what they're doing is they're destroying themselves. You look at healthcare.
Yes.
I'm not going to be bothered by the loss of healthcare. I just write a check. They're going to lose their healthcare.
Right.
Tax cuts.
Who needs tax cuts?
If you don't make anything, what's a tax cut?
Yeah.
You know, I'm sure there's not a lot of people who voted for Trump in the Midwest states who have to worry about estate taxes. So they're basically beating themselves up. They breathe the same air we do. There's no human being on this planet, I don't think, who you can look in the eyes, who has a child or has a wife and can say, I really want to pollute their lungs tomorrow. My dream,
Shorten their lifespan.
my dream is to really shorten their life and make it really uncomfortable. Those people, I can't imagine that they would say. That's why I'd love to be able to talk to them. I can't find them to talk to them.
Yeah. Well, this is an interesting thing, your involvement in the music industry. You've been in packed arenas where people were together, where they were exultant, enthusiastic, inspired. How can we bring the arts to bear? How can we to help build that kind of, what's the old Youngblood song?
I know which
Get
one
together.
Yeah. Well, one of the things he pointed out today, which struck me very hard, I hadn't really thought about it before, was the Dixie Chicks, who took a position, and their careers were destroyed.
Yes.
So that audience has been around longer than Trump. Trump is almost the pimple on the head of the problem.
He's an effect.
Yeah, he's the pimple.
Yeah. The White Stripes, Jack White. He's got a song called Effect and Cause. And the second verse goes like this. I ain't the reason, you gave me no reason to return your call. You built a house of cards and you're shocked that you saw it fall. I ain't innocent, in fact the reverse. But when you go into the grave, you don't blame the hearse. You're like a little kid screaming at your brother after you lost his ball. And I do think that Donald Trump was the inevitable result of a numb
it has to be.
inattentive politics and economics for a very long time.
I think it has to be because there's nothing on the surface that would attract them. There's nothing within what he did that could attract a religious community. Everything he said, everything he stands for, everything he does is so offensive to anybody who truly is religious. And almost every segment of his community is like that. If you're poor, the last thing you want to do is have tax cuts for the rich, which is all he talked about. So I think he's the pimple. He's not. He didn't create him. What blows my mind is how they would what created him and how do we talk to him. Until we can solve that problem, I don't know.
We've seen people like, I recently met Margaret Atwood, the famous novelist, The Handmaid's Tale and so forth. Dystopian novels. When you're down and you don't see a way out, does a dystopian novel propel you in a direction, or does it just deepen your despair?
Well, I think one of the unanswered questions in my brain is how much the media has contributed to this concept of everything is a battle. It's good against bad. It's fighting. All the media is based on every reality show is based on trouble. There always has to be a problem, a divorce, a cheating on your wife. Everything, there's nothing in the media. The movies are all, people killing people with better weapons.
Well, reality game shows are like survival of the fittest.
It's all
in
crazy.
the jungle or something.
But that's what we fed to the people. And they sort of have divided the world into us and them when it's really we. And once you go to us and them, you have big problems. And that's where we are now.
Muhammad Ali is known to have the shortest poem in the history of the world, according to the Guinness Book of World Records. It was when he was giving the Harvard commencement address. He got off the stage, and a student screamed, "Hey, Ali, how about a poem?" And he got up and he said, "Me, we."
Yeah,
And inside me and we is all of our social theory.
Somewhere
We've lost we. Well, people have become intoxicated with a fear that counting on we is not reliable.
Well, certainly not a good thing right now in weed land.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
But I think, like you were talking about, comedy, music, visual arts. You've made a lot of films. You made a film, I remember, about, what was it, Koyaanisqatsi, Life Out of Balance.
I wish I could get everyone to go see that movie right now.
Yeah, well, we
understand
got
it.
this audience, so we're going to figure out how to bring it to their attention.
It is a life out of balance now.
Yeah, and
very Koyaanisqatsi sort of time.
yeah. So you have a daughter, Amber, who I met. We went sailing together.
Yeah, love her.
You've met my two little girls. It's hard being a parent right now.
Really tough.
When we know we are handing the ball to them.
And it's tough being a kid. My Amber is an Afro-American. She's on tour with Alice Cooper. They were playing Virginia about 2 weeks after that incident.
Oh, man.
And she called me up crying. And she said, "Grandpa," she called me Grandpa because they're adopted, and I always was Grandpa. Right. "Grandpa Shep, I'm really scared." "What are you crying about?" She said, "I'm scared to go to Virginia. I don't know, as a black person, I'm really scared to go to Virginia." And I sort of calmed it down, but...
And she spends a lot of time in Detroit, too.
Oh, yeah, no, she's
She's
worldly.
very
This is not she's came in second in the state in wrestling. This is not a timid little Barbie doll girl and crying. So that's how deep this is seeded in. It's remarkable in just a year how deeply the country has changed. That I have that a 25-year-old college graduate, Afro-American, who's never experienced poverty, would cry about going to Virginia.
Yeah.
That's how we've regressed in this country.
Say the floorboards are starting to come unglued. And,
that's big stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, that was a real eye-opener. Because for me, it's still an intellectual experience. It hasn't really affected my life, except emotionally. For her, it's different. It's a real effect on her life. She's going to make life choice decisions with that in her brain. It's horrible. We work so hard.
That anxiety has physiological effects when it starts or is for a prolonged period of time.
I mean, can you imagine crying about going to Virginia?
Yeah.
And she's lived a privileged life. This isn't, I love her. She's great. But even, so you can imagine when you get to the poverty level of an Afro-American, what must be in their minds these days with the way Trump has turned the world into we and them. Yeah. And they are definitely them.
Demonized.
Yeah,
yes.
They are demonized. It's remarkable. So that's why I say it's so big. I don't know, for the first time in my life, I don't know how to talk to these people and who they are.
Yeah. But there's an interesting other side if we're talking Democrats versus Republicans. There are an awful lot of people who think that the Democrats act like people with prestige degrees who think that because you have a degree from an Ivy League school or a Berkeley or University of Michigan, you can ignore these people.
Yeah.
That they didn't win the game, or they're not the fittest. They didn't rise to the top, so they deserve what's happening.
Yeah, to me, there isn't a big difference between Democrats and Republicans. When I say we and them, I'm really talking about conscious humans who actually care about their planet, their neighbors, who care. I think the majority of those people are within the Democratic Party, but only because there's no other choice at this point. But I I think there's many people like me who are so disappointed in a party that would run someone. I happen to be a fan of Hillary Clinton. The fact that the Democratic Party would know that 60% of the people before the election didn't trust her and put her up for office is criminal to me. It's as criminal as putting up Trump. And it has nothing to do with her.
Right.
It has to do with, it's not about you, it's about them. If they're telling you they don't trust her,
You're not responding to them.
You're not responding to them. Your arrogance is the same arrogance Trump has. It's no different. It's just that I happen to be on their side of most issues. But in terms of no respect for humans, I don't see any real difference. I think they couch their appeal in things that I'm attracted to.
Yeah.
But whether they really act on it, I don't see it.
I'll paraphrase. There's an old Bertolt Brecht poem called "The Solution," and it was something to the effect of, the population came to us today, and they didn't like what the government did. So we decided it was easier to dissolve the people than to dissolve the government.
Yeah, exactly.
And,
that's
that's
exactly
the mindset.
That's
He was
exactly
being
it.
facetious.
No, that is exactly it.
And, but I think what interests me, Shep, I remember you talking to me about knowing people like Jimi Hendrix and Janis Joplin and working with George Harrison. I'm a bit befuddled that I don't see the rebellion from the musical artists today, though Eminem last night on BET really took off after
I thought he was great.
Trump.
It was great.
But boy, does he stand in contrast.
No, I agree 100%. I'm confused
Where
by it.
is that artistic integrity and rebellion now in the, let's just call it the American and European music scene?
Yeah, I think it's a twofold problem. I think one is that they all got their butts kicked at the election. You know, the community really came out strong.
They were on the other side.
And got really kicked. But I think also there's a problem that there's nobody to circle around. There's nobody to put your wagons around. If someone stood out, like if Michelle Obama said, I'm going to run for office, and they had somebody to put their wagons around, now the only thing they have to put their wagons around is against something.
Yeah, that's not.
And
that's not the propulsion you need.
Yeah, and that's
art.
not a good propulsion in art.
Yeah.
So it's really, I think.
But I look at people like Neil Young, a song like Ohio. I look at the kind of energy that artists used to muster in the face of black people being killed, race riots, the Vietnam protests, and so forth. And I speak to a group periodically about the role of artists in politics called air traffic control. And one night I gave a very passionate talk, and I walked off, and the guy from one of the major bands, who I won't name, came up and put his hand on my shoulder, and he said, "You don't understand. I agree with you entirely, but my corporate sponsorship would cancel my tour if I went on stage like that."
That's a sad comment.
And
that's a really sad comment.
Yeah. But you know that an artist who has courage and integrity is a magnet. The fan base can rally to that.
I think there's I'm not in the community anymore as much as I used to be. But I think there's a feeling that they're sort of powerless on one hand. And then there's an entire group of artists who I think truly believe this, that every time they say something against Trump, his audience gets stronger because they're part of that liberal left Hollywood.
Yeah, they have been pegged as
They've been
something.
pegged. So they feel almost guilt in the loss of Clinton, that by putting themselves into the race, they hurt Clinton.
This is what haunts me, and part of why in our recent discussions I was inspired to meet with you today, because you have always had such a really refined insight and instinct into how to make an artist blossom, how to relate to people, how to market Emerald or Wolfgang Puck, or engage people with food, or work with Sammy Hagar on a tequila.
But Trump has used exactly the techniques I
You
always
understand those methods, so you're seeing him using those methods and why they're effective.
What I always talk about when I try to explain what I did for a living was I never tried to reinvent the wheel. I would watch for a cultural wave. And when I saw the wave, I would put a face on it and surf it. So Alice was just, when I started with Alice, you didn't come out of the closet. But there was a wave happening, that sexual openness was okay, that you could be who you wanted to be, but it was still forbidden fruit. So I decided to make him the face of the wave. The same thing with Emerald. I could see across the landscape of America that restaurants were sold out. Concerts weren't, movies weren't. Every great restaurant you couldn't get into. That's a wave. So I put Emerald's face on the wave. What Donald Trump is obviously seeing, why I talk about him being the pimple, is this wave that's existed for, I guess, a long time, way beyond me.
Dissatisfaction.
And he's just surfed the wave and fed it. It's brilliant, but I guess like in Star Wars, if you don't use the wand, whoever's holding it, it can be really detrimental or really positive.
Well, what we got to do then is find the surfing equivalent of Kelly Slater, who's got now his own wave generating machine, and we've got to create some
That's
positive
what we
waves.
need, a hero.
Yeah.
We need somebody to rally. I don't think we're going to be able to motivate most humans until we get a hero, until we get somebody that they can rally around. And I don't see the Democrats at this moment presenting any choices. I love Joe Biden, but he's not the person who they're going to rally around. I think Bernie Sanders had his moment.
Well, in many ways, he's not like Trump, but both of them were diagnosticians of what was wrong.
He caught a wave.
Could see the wave.
Yeah, he caught a wave too.
As the leader who prescribes the remedies that are holistic, that address that despair, I think we're all wanting for that, but not seeing it crystallize.
We need a Joseph Campbell hero. We need Joseph Campbell.
Yes, Joseph Campbell had a famous line. He said, "Heroism is born of self-sacrifice, not calculation." And Bill Moyers told me that, and I thought, that's a fascinating
That's a great line.
And it raises the question of whether most of the people who run political office with all their, look in the rearview mirror surveys and focus groups are calculators or heart-inspired, heroic, which I think is what you're beckoning for.
A hero.
To bring people to a positive place.
We need a Kennedy. We need somebody that people can rally around, because we need to get the people out of their houses. I don't think we'll ever change the Trump people. I think that maybe they're next generation, but they're so blind and only see their own thing if they can deal with what everyone sees as reality, and they don't care. So it's the other 65% of the country. If we can get somebody motivated.
Well, I'll tell you my own intuition on that. I did a little bit of work with Reverend William Barber around the turn of the year, and he asked me to speak to a group about what would be my strategy. And I showed them a slideshow of Trump voters and the economic despair. And I particularly focused on the African Americans that were in the audience, and I said, the absolute level of African American mortality is worse than for white people. But in the last 8 years when Obama was president, it improved marginally, whereas it deteriorated drastically for white rural men. So that the rate of change rather than the level was really shifting. And I challenged the group. I said, the hardest thing Martin Luther King ever asked anybody to do was love their enemies. But if you can imagine those people who voted to bring someone who you despise into power as 1 millimeter away from being your ally, if you can empathize with their suffering, you're building a broader coalition.
Yeah, of course. I have no hatred for them. I have compassion. I want to hug every one of them and say it's okay. It's really okay. Nobody's out to hurt you.
Yeah.
We
Well,
all really want to come to my table and share my food.
I have a California friend who's a social psychologist, and he said, when Trump, as president, starts to do the things that fortify the rigged system, subsidize the oligarchs, don't expect people who voted for him to admit it.
Right.
Because he said, with cognitive dissonance, people will not say, I was wrong, and jump back into despair.
They're
the
in.
only way they come out of despair is if somebody shows them a healthy path that alleviates their fear. That's, I believe, the challenge for the Democratic Party in America. And by the way, with Brexit, with Marie Le Pen rising, not quite in power, with the AfD, the far-right party in Germany, getting into the parliament for the first time.
It's a global
this is
problem.
a global problem.
Oh, yeah. There's, none of these things happen in isolation.
Yes.
Pink became the color, not just in America for kids, it's everywhere.
Yeah.
Celebrity chefs, when they happen in America, they happen in England, they happen in India, they happen, it's one globe, it's a small place.
Yeah.
But
Well, I want to tell one last story about you. I once met a celebrity chef in Southern Europe, and he talked about transforming his life, and I said, there's no person I would rather introduce him to than you, because of the soulfulness that I've grown to know, and because the challenge that he described to me he wanted to face. But after exploring it with you, you came back to me as you were getting ready for Alice Cooper's Halloween show in London.
right, that was fun.
Yeah, and you
We had
said
a great
to me,
breakfast somewhere that day.
yeah, and that's right.
Yeah.
And you said to me, I decided not to work with him because when a guy wants to close his restaurant so that private parties on private jets can come for special occasions, he's not creating great food for a broad number of people. And I have to use my energy to work with people who want to do things I think are important. When you said that to me, I thought that was amazing.
I'm still on the same mission.
Yeah, I know. And that's why in these despairing times, I was grateful that you would come and talk with
my
me, because we're all concerned.
I just gave the graduation speech at the CIA Culinary Institute.
Yes.
And I said to the students, I said, we've all worked really hard for you guys to graduate into $150,000 jobs. And I'm really happy for all of you that, every graduate gets a job. I said, but if you think we all work this hard for you to cook meals that are $100 each, and that's all you do, you picked the wrong job, because your job is to feed people. And when you close the door of your restaurant where every meal is $100 and nobody can get in, look to the left and look to the right, and there's going to be homeless people who are hungry. And you can either feed them because you're a compassionate, great person, or you can feed them because if you don't, they're going to break into your restaurant and steal everything. So one way or the other, you better feed everybody.
That's using the carrot and the stick.